2 hours west of Fort Worth, in the middle of the Texas plains, the ground is being torn apart. More than 100 excavators, dump trucks, and cranes are digging into the red clay, day and night. Thousands of workers in bright vests swarm across a site larger than New York Central Park, moving between giant concrete segments and generators. From a distance, you might think it's a new oil boom, or maybe some secretive military installation. The sheer scale feels like a national-level project. But this isn't for oil, and it's not being built by any government. All this machinery, all this frantic activity was mobilized by one man, Sam Altman. And this construction site on the edge of the small town of Abilene is the front line in a new kind of global war. It's the foundation for a supercomputer called Stargate, and it's just the beginning. What's unfolding in this dusty corner of Texas reveals a silent race, a private undertaking on a scale not seen since the Industrial Revolution, where a handful of billionaires are building the infrastructure that will control our future. Welcome to the deep dive. That opening paints a pretty intense picture, doesn't it? It really hits you with just the overwhelming scale of what's happening kind of behind the scenes in the tech world.
It really does. It's immense.
So today, we're embarking on a deep dive into these hidden layers, this new global race for AI supremacy. It's a sprint, really, driven by just enormous amounts of private capital on a scale that honestly makes the Industrial Revolution feel almost quaint.
Yeah, like a warm-up act almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the most striking thing, it's largely happening out of the public eye, even as it's, laying the groundwork for how we'll all live.
It's truly a foundational shift. We're not just talking about faster computers here. We're watching the...
First, we're going to plunge into the truly mind-boggling energy demands. These AI supercomputers and data centers, they're just incredibly thirsty, and there's this global hunt for sustainable power to feed them.
The energy piece is huge, often underestimated.
Totally. Second, we'll grapple with the profound geopolitical implications and the regulatory challenges that pop up when, just a handful of private companies get this level of control over essential AI infrastructure.
Control being the key word there.
Exactly. And finally, we'll dissect the strategic vulnerabilities and the intense global competition that's happening within this highly concentrated supply chain for advanced AI chips. We'll explore the desperate efforts by tech giants to achieve what you might call silicon independence. It's a journey from the ground up, quite literally.
Yeah, and when we talk about something on such a vast kind of abstract scale, billions of dollars, gigawatts, petaflops, it's easy to lose sight of the actual real-world impact. These aren't just numbers on a page. They have tangible, immediate consequences for communities, for nations. How do we even begin to visualize that? You're
absolutely right. It's hard to grasp. How do we make this real? How do we see the impact on, ordinary communities? Maybe a specific example could bring it home. That's what we should probably start. I was thinking about this story. Let's call him Earl.
Okay, Earl.
I was reading about this new AI Cold War, right? This massive private race for computational power. And it just felt so abstract. Billions of dollars, trillions of operations per second. Numbers that just wash over you.
Yeah, hard to picture.
So I try to imagine the people inside those headlines. I heard about a place like Abilene, Texas, where one of these just gargantuan AI data centers is planned. And I can picture this man, let's call him Earl, who's run a small hardware store there for 40 years.
Okay, local business owner.
Yeah. At first, the news sounds like a godsend, right? He sees visions of construction workers flooding his store, maybe new families moving in, a revival for a town that's seen better days. He stocks up on tools, supplies, gets ready for the boom.
That makes sense. Hopeful.
But then the construction starts. And it's a complex the size of, a dozen shopping malls, humming with this low, constant energy that seems to just vibrate through the ground.
You can almost feel that hum.
Yeah. And his electricity bill at the store and at home, it starts creeping up. The local news starts talking about new strains on the power grid, arguments over water rights for cooling these massive servers.
The hidden costs start appearing.
Exactly. Earl sees fewer local families coming in and more transient workers living in temporary housing, buying from the big national chains, not his store.
So the local benefit isn't quite what he imagined?
Not at all. One evening, he's standing on his porch, looking at this faint industrial glow on the horizon, and he just feels this deep unease. The promised prosperity feels hollow, like it belongs to someone else, somewhere far away. His town is just providing the land and the power, and they're left dealing with the hum and the heat.
Wow.
As someone who covers tech, I see Earl's story as, the hidden cost of progress. We get a magical AI assistant on our phones, But communities like his, they pay the physical price.
It really crystallizes the question, doesn't it? When a private company builds infrastructure that consumes as much energy as a city, who are they truly accountable to? The shareholders, maybe 1,000 miles away, or the people like Earl living right there in its shadow?
That's the crux of it. And Earl's story perfectly sets up this discussion about the truly unprecedented energy demands we're facing. These hyperscale AI data centers aren't just large. They're, like you said, gargantuan in their thirst for power, a new kind of digital leviathan.
They really are, and the numbers are staggering.
Let's put some figures on it. That Stargate project, Sam Altman's building in Abilene, once it's up and running, probably 2026, it's projected to consume a massive 1.2 gigawatts of electricity.
1.2 gigawatts, just let that sink in.
Yeah, to put that in perspective, that's about the peak power consumption of a mid-sized capital city, like Prague or Belgrade.
Yeah.
It's nearly double what an entire city like Sofia, Bulgaria needs at its peak.
And that's just one project.
Right, and it just keeps escalating. Meta, for instance, is planning its Hyperion facility down in Louisiana. That one's designed to potentially draw up to 5 gigawatts.
5 gigawatts. That's the output of like 4 nuclear for one data center complex.
It's unbelievable. And OpenAI itself, they've announced plans to invest, get this, $500 billion by 2029 in new computing centers around the world.
$500 billion just on computing centers. That's not incremental growth. That is exponential demand for energy.
It really is mind-boggling. And it's not just OpenAI, of course. You see others making these colossal bets on infrastructure and chips. Elon Musk, with xAI, he already has this Colossus supercomputer in Memphis.
Right, the one they built incredibly quickly.
In 120 days, it houses 200,000 NVIDIA chips already. His goal is 550,000 chips by the end of this year, and the 5-year plan, 50 million chips.
50 million chips. The power draw for that alone is hard to comprehend.
Totally. So how does this fit into the bigger picture globally?
Well, connecting this to the broader trend, data centers globally were already consuming over 205 terawatt hours of electricity annually back in 2019. That was around 3% of global energy use.
Okay, 3% back then.
Now, projections suggest that figure is set to rise to 4% by 2030, with total energy consumption potentially soaring to 2,500 terawatt hours.
Wow.
And just to make it relatable, an average hyperscale facility, just one, can consume between 20 to 50 megawatts yearly. That's enough electricity to power up to, say, 37,000 households.
So we're essentially building digital cities that need their own power grids.
That's exactly it. The insight here is that we're not just scaling up. We might need to fundamentally rethink our energy infrastructure. It's quite possible the biggest constraint on AI's growth won't be the chips, but the actual electrical power available.
That's a really powerful point. And that immense energy use, it comes with a significant environmental footprint, which was part of Earl's unease back in Abilene. We're talking serious carbon emissions.
Absolutely. Back in 2019, data centers generated roughly the same volume of carbon emissions as the entire global airline industry.
The entire airline industry?
Yep, about 2% of global emissions. And that number is projected to climb even further, largely because so many regions still rely heavily on fossil fuels for electricity.
Okay, so carbon is a big one. But beyond carbon, you mentioned Earl was worried about water, too. How significant is that?
Water usage is critical and, honestly, often overlooked. Cooling these massive server farms requires immense amounts of water. For example, just the evaporative cooling systems can consume up to 5 million gallons of water annually for a single data center.
5 million gallons. What's that equivalent to?
That's roughly the water usage of a city housing between 30,000 and 50,000 people.
Wow. So that puts a huge strain on local water resources, especially in areas that might already be water stressed. You can see the conflicts rising there.
Exactly. Think about agriculture, residential use in those communities. It becomes a major point of contention. And these traditional cooling methods are also incredibly inefficient. They often account for almost half of a data center's total energy usage.
So it's a double whammy. Huge power draw and huge water draw.
Precisely. Plus, you've got the electronic waste, the e-waste problem. The pace of tech advancement means constant upgrades, mountains of discarded servers, storage devices, networking gear, all containing hazardous materials that need responsible disposal. That's another significant environmental challenge.
So given these huge demands, the environmental pressures, fossil fuels clearly aren't the long-term answer. What are the specific limitations there that make them so unsustainable for this kind of growth?
Well, the need for sustainable solutions becomes crystal clear when you look at fossil fuels. They're increasingly unsustainable, obviously because of the greenhouse gas emissions and climate impact, but also economically.
How so, economically?
Think about volatile fuel costs. Relying on them leads to increasing and unpredictable operational expenses. That's a huge risk for infrastructure that absolutely needs stable, uninterrupted power 24/7. They just pose too many economic risks, energy supply limitations, not to mention the regulatory and compliance challenges are only getting stricter worldwide.
Okay, so traditional sources are hitting their limits, which brings us to alternatives. Geothermal energy seems to be getting a lot more attention. It's like the Earth itself offering a solution, right? What exactly is it, and why is it so promising for this specific problem?
That's a great way to think about it. Geothermal energy basically harnesses the Earth's own internal heat. It's continuously generated by radioactive decay deep down in the core. So it offers a clean, incredibly dependable, and actually very efficient power source. The core idea is simple. Tap into the planet's natural warmth.
And how does that work in practice? Can you just drill a hole anywhere and get power?
Not quite anywhere, but the principle is clever. It involves using either heat pumps for shallower applications or drilling deep wells to access steam or very hot water from within the Earth. This heat can then be used in a couple of ways. Either directly to generate electricity in a power plant, or it can be used more directly for heating and cooling buildings.
And I've heard about different types of systems. There are ground source heat pumps, and then these things called enhanced geothermal systems, EGS. What's the difference, and why does it matter for something huge like an AI data center?
That's a really key distinction. So you've got ground source heat pumps, GSHPs. They're great for individual buildings or smaller complexes. They use the stable temperature of the Earth just a few feet down, exchanging heat through closed-loop pipe systems for heating and cooling. Think of it like using the ground as a giant, stable thermal battery.
Okay, that makes sense for smaller scale.
Then you have deep geothermal systems. These drill miles down to tap into much higher temperatures, usually for direct electricity generation at dedicated power plants.
Right.
But here's where it gets really exciting for large-scale energy needs like data centers. Enhanced geothermal systems, or EGS. This isn't just about finding existing hotspots. With EGS, engineers actually create or enhance underground reservoirs, often in hot but dry rock formations.
They create reservoirs? How?
They might fracture the rock deep underground, creating permeability, and then inject water. This water circulates through the hot rock, picks up the heat, and is brought back to the surface. It's essentially controlled subsurface engineering, making new hot wells where nature didn't provide a perfect one.
Wow. Actively engineering the Earth for energy.
Exactly. And this is significant because it dramatically expands the number of places where geothermal power plants could be viable. It makes it a much more widespread potential solution for really substantial energy needs like those massive data centers.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So what's the global potential for this? Is there enough geothermal energy out there to actually meet AI's huge appetite?
The global potential is indeed immense. Geothermal resources are abundant, especially in regions along the Pacific Ring of Fire. Think Indonesia, the Philippines, Central America. Also, places like the East African Rift Valley, Italy, Iceland, and parts of the U.S., particularly California, Nevada, Hawaii.
So plenty of hotspots.
Right. And what abundant means practically is that there's significant untapped potential. We're only using a fraction of what's accessible. It offers that consistent baseload power source that could be a genuine game changer for AI infrastructure.
And for data centers specifically, geothermal must have some really compelling advantages beyond just being green, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are the key benefits that make it such a good fit?
Oh, absolutely. The advantages are really compelling for data centers. First, sustainability and low environmental impact. It's low to zero emissions, which aligns perfectly with environmental mandates and corporate goals.
Okay, that's the obvious one.
Second, and maybe even more importantly for data centers, is reliability and consistency. Geothermal offers constant baseload power. It's not intermittent like solar or wind. It's always on, 247, which is absolutely crucial for operations that cannot afford downtime.
That reliability must translate into real cost savings too.
It does. That stability means greater energy efficiency and long-term cost effectiveness. By tapping into this stable, continuous energy source, data centers can achieve lower, more predictable operational costs, buffering them against those volatile fossil fuel prices we talked about.
And there's a cooling benefit too, isn't there?
Yes, and this is huge. Geothermal energy can often be used directly for cooling, significantly reducing the need for those energy-intensive mechanical cooling systems. This dual benefit, providing power and cooling is a potential game changer. It addresses both the massive energy consumption and the huge water demand simultaneously.
Plus, it offers greater resilience, right? Makes them less vulnerable to grid problems or energy shocks.
Exactly. Resource independence. It's a really integrated solution for the kind of energy challenge AI represents.
So if a company wanted to integrate geothermal, what does that process actually look like? Is it easy?
Well, easy might be relative, but it's a systematic process. It usually starts with a really thorough site assessment to find suitable locations with viable geothermal resources underground.
Okay, finding the right spot.
Then comes the drilling, which can be expensive. After that, constructing the power plant if it's for electricity generation, and finally integrating it with the existing electrical grid. The main hurdles are often the upfront capital costs for drilling and construction, and you need detailed geological surveys to make sure the resource is sustainable long-term.
But the technology itself is getting better, making it more feasible.
Absolutely. The technology is constantly improving. Those enhanced geothermal systems we discussed are a big part of that. We're also seeing advanced drilling techniques that lower costs and increase efficiency, plus better heat exchange systems.
Any other innovations?
Yeah, we're seeing development of hybrid systems, maybe combining geothermal with solar or wind and smart energy management systems. These actually use AI itself to optimize how the power is used within the data center. These advancements are really key for broader adoption, making geothermal potentially a cornerstone for sustainable data centers.
And looking at the economics and environment overall, the upfront costs are high, but what's the long-term picture?
Economically, while those upfront costs are significant, the long-term savings from stable, low operational expenses can be very compelling. Plus, there are often financial incentives, federal or state grants, tax credits that make the investment more attractive.
Right.
Environmentally, the benefit of reducing carbon emissions is huge, obviously. But it also goes beyond just the balance sheet. It helps meet climate goals, potentially improves a company's brand reputation, and addresses those local resource concerns like water usage.
And it seems like organizations are finally starting to really catch on to this need for sustainability. I saw a Gartner prediction that 75% of organizations will have data center sustainability programs by 2027.
That sounds about right. The pressure is definitely mounting.
And it's about more than just the power source. It's about energy efficiency within the data center, right? Like virtualization, running multiple virtual servers on one physical machine, or smarter cooling techniques.
Exactly. Things like hot aisle, cold aisle containment to manage airflow more efficiently. It's also about waste reduction, proper recycling, managing the life cycle of equipment, and crucially, water conservation, using reclaimed water or more efficient cooling systems.
And you mentioned AI itself can help here.
Yeah, it's a fascinating feedback loop. AI and machine learning algorithms can actually optimize data center operations in real time. They can dynamically adjust energy usage, shift workloads around, tweak cooling systems based on current demand. This minimizes waste, boosts efficiency, ensures resources are used only when and where needed.
And it extends to the physical buildings, too. Green building practices.
Definitely. Incorporating recycled materials in construction, designing for natural lighting where possible, improving ventilation. For a massive data center, this means intelligent design that integrates natural elements and passive cooling techniques to cut down the overall energy footprint. It's becoming a much more holistic approach to environmental responsibility.
Okay, so moving beyond the physical hum of those massive data centers, we get to another critical layer of this deep dive. The geopolitics of AI infrastructure, because it's clearly not just about energy, is it? It's really about control.
Control is absolutely central.
I was trying to wrap my head around this geopolitical angle. It's so different from traditional resource politics.
Right.
I tried to imagine, say, a mid-level analyst, let's call her Claire, working for maybe an EU commission in Brussels.
Claire in Brussels?
Her job for decades has been assessing strategic dependencies. Oil, gas pipelines, shipping lanes, that's what mattered. Now, her screen is filled with something totally new, a map of privately owned hyperscale data centers, almost all controlled by just a handful of American tech giants.
The new strategic map.
Exactly. She sees them as new kingdoms, these digital empires with no defined borders, accountable to no electorate. She writes a memo pointing out that the critical infrastructure for Europe's future, its economy, its research, even its defense, is being built and controlled by foreign private entities.
That's a stark realization.
Yeah. Their terms of service could change overnight. Access could become a tool of political leverage, not wielded by a state, but by a CEO. Her boss reads the memo, nods, calls it insightful, but she kind of knows it'll just be filed away.
The old guard focused on old maps.
Right. The political leaders are still focused on traditional diplomacy, maybe energy pipelines, while the real levers of future power are being forged in silicon and code way outside their grasp. Claire closes her laptop, feeling like a modern-day Cassandra, warning about a new world order that's already here while everyone else is still reading yesterday's news. When I think about Claire's perspective, it's genuinely chilling. We've spent centuries building systems of international law, democratic governance to manage the power of nation-states. Now we're watching a few corporations quietly become more powerful, more essential than many of the countries in those systems.
They're building the territory where future generations will live their digital lives, and they're writing the laws for that territory.
Exactly. Claire's anxiety feels like the only rational response when you realize we might just be becoming tenants on land we once thought we owned.
Claire's anxiety is, I think, spot on. What's powerful and maybe unsettling is that AI isn't just another technology. It's rapidly becoming the actual cornerstone of 21st century geopolitics. Nations are in this full-blown race to harness its power, and in doing so, they're redefining military doctrines, economic strategies, and really the global order itself.
That's a strong claim, a foundational shift in global power. What makes AI so different from, say, the internet's early days in terms of that geopolitical impact?
It's different because AI isn't just a tool for communication or commerce. It's becoming a universal enabler of capability. A 2024 report from the Brookings Institution really laid this out well. They outline AI's strategic value across 3 key parallels that redefine national power.
Okay, what are they?
First, the economic edge. AI-driven automation and innovation promise massive boosts in productivity. They create entirely new industries, and they disrupt traditional business models on a global scale. Just think about how much more efficient and therefore wealthy and influential a nation becomes if it leads in AI.
Right, sheer economic advantage. What's the second?
Diplomatic leverage. AI enhances a country's soft power. If you're setting the global standards for AI development and ethics, if your technology is the one everyone uses, your values and regulatory approaches tend to become the default worldwide. You shape international norms without firing a shot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And the third must be military.
Exactly. Military superiority. AI enables faster, more accurate battlefield decisions. It allows for autonomous weapons systems, advanced intelligence gathering. We're already seeing AI systems playing significant roles in current conflicts, like in Ukraine and Gaza. They accelerate decision-making and enhance surveillance in ways that were science fiction just a decade ago.
So it fundamentally changes economic competition, diplomatic influence, and warfare. And you mentioned this is redrawing the global balance of power, moving towards a multipolar AI landscape with the US, China, the EU.
Yeah, it's causing a real realignment of global alliances. You see the US forming pacts like AUKUS, that's the security deal with Australia and the UK, specifically designed to pool AI capabilities and share advanced tech among allies.
Oh.
Meanwhile, China and Russia are strengthening their partnership, partly to counterbalance that Western influence, often sharing AI research and infrastructure developments. This competition goes way beyond just who has the best algorithm. It's about diplomatic strategies, and ultimately it's a battle for control over the global digital infrastructure, now and for the future.
So technological leadership becomes as critical as military might or economic size.
Pretty much, yeah.
And at the heart of this tension is what people are calling the AI Cold War between the US and China. What does the U.S. strategy look like in that fight?
The U.S. strategy is, well, multifaceted. It leverages its huge advantages. Major tech firms like Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, world-class universities, deep venture capital pools, these are powerful engines for innovation.
Right, the existing ecosystem.
Then there are massive investments going into AI infrastructure data centers, advanced computing systems trying to maintain that leading edge. And critically, there's a strong push for STEM education and workforce development. They recognize that the talent, the human capital, is just as vital as the hardware.
Makes sense. Are they betting everything on proprietary closed AI models, or is it a mix?
It's definitely a mix. The U.S. is promoting both open source and closed source AI models. Open source helps foster broad collaboration, rapid innovation across the whole tech ecosystem. Closed source models are more geared towards specialized commercial applications and also for enhanced security, especially for sensitive government or enterprise uses.
Okay.
And alongside that, there's a heavy focus on securing the AI infrastructure itself, preventing theft of trade secrets, all wrapped up in a comprehensive national AI strategy trying to address the ethical, regulatory, and security angles.
But part of that strategy involves export controls, right? Limiting China's access to advanced chips and AI equipment. I heard even Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo call that approach a fool's errand if the U.S. doesn't also innovate faster.
Yeah.
What are the risks there? Does it just push China to become self-sufficient?
That is the critical tension, yes. The export controls are designed as choke points, trying to slow China's progress by denying access to the most advanced Western technology, particularly chips and the equipment to make them. However, the risk is exactly what Secretary Raimondo pointed out. By cutting China off, you heavily incentivize them to pour resources into developing their own domestic capabilities. It could inadvertently accelerate their path to greater technological independence, creating a more self-sufficient and potentially more formidable long-term competitor. It's a really tricky balancing act. Restrict versus advance.
Meanwhile, China's ambition is crystal clear. Become the world leader in AI by 2030. How are they tackling this? What advantages do they have?
China's approach is heavily state-driven. Massive state investment through plans like their next-generation artificial intelligence development plan. This funnels billions into R&D and infrastructure. They also have a huge advantage in terms of data. Just the sheer volume of data generated by their population is invaluable for training AI models.
And they leverage other strengths too.
Yes, they're leveraging their dominance in clean energy manufacturing to rapidly deploy the power-hungry AI infrastructure. And despite U.S. restrictions, they're still actively attracting global tech investment where they can.
It's interesting, though, how Chinese AI companies like DeepSeek seem to operate within the lines of official state narratives. That must limit transparency and raise concerns, especially for Western users or partners.
It definitely does. That lack of transparency, particularly around data usage and alignment with state goals, creates concerns about data security and potential misuse, especially when these companies try to operate internationally.
But beyond domestic development, how is China positioning itself globally with AI?
Strategically, they're targeting emerging markets. Chinese tech giants like Alibaba and Huawei are providing cloud services, 5G capabilities, essentially building the digital backbone for other countries. This makes it easier for those nations to adopt Chinese AI frameworks and digital infrastructure later on. It creates a kind of technological sphere of influence.
So even with the U.S. choke point tactics.
Right. Despite those tactics, China is making these moves, and we're already seeing evidence that it's pushing them towards greater independence. Chinese AI models, like some from DeepSeek, are achieving results nearly on par with Western models, sometimes using fewer computational resources. This suggests they're making real progress on efficiency and self-sufficiency. The choke point might be more of a speed bump than a permanent wall.
This whole situation leads us to this really profound shift, the rise of what some call technocracy. This AI race seems to have transformed tech giants into a new kind of infrastructure power. Their influence goes way beyond just market share, right? It's impacting geopolitics, resource control, our future itself. What makes this new form of power so different?
What's fundamentally different, I think, is that figures like Altman, Musk, Zuckerberg, Bezos, they aren't just building companies. They are, in a very real sense, constructing a kind of parallel world or a digital territory. And in this territory, major decisions affecting millions, maybe billions, are made by corporate boards, not elected governments.
How is that different from, say, railroads or power grids historically?
Well, traditional infrastructure roads, power grids, water systems were typically either public utilities or, if private, very heavily regulated because they were seen as essential public services. This new digital infrastructure, the cloud platforms, the AI models, the data centers, it's largely private, and regulation is still playing catch-up.
So they control the new essential resource.
Exactly. Through their data centers and cloud services, these individuals and companies control the critical infrastructure of the AI age. It's analogous to how Rockefeller controlled oil, JP Morgan banking, Vanderbilt railroads, Carnegie steel a century ago. The difference now is the resource is information and intelligence, the territory is digital, and the influence is global and instantaneous in a way those earlier titans couldn't imagine.
That comparison is pretty stark. We're talking about the Magnificent Seven: Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Tesla. Just in 2024, they generated over $2 trillion in revenue, nearly $500 billion in profit. If they were a country, their economy would be like South Korea's, the 12th largest in the world. What are the dangers when so much power and wealth is concentrated in so few private hands?
The concentration itself is a major risk. Their decisions, driven primarily by shareholder value and profit, can have massive ripple effects on national security, economic competitiveness, even democratic processes, often without direct public accountability or oversight.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine if a dominant cloud provider decided to significantly change its terms of service, or maybe prioritize certain AI developers over others, or even cut off access to a particular region for political reasons. They could effectively create bottlenecks, stifle innovation, or even influence geopolitical events, all based on corporate strategy rather than public policy. It's a form of control that goes far beyond traditional market influence.
Which raises the unavoidable question. How do we regulate this? How do we manage this immense private power when it controls infrastructure that's becoming vital to national security in everyday life?
It's the central challenge. Deploying AI in critical sectors, energy grids, water systems, transportation networks, communications, absolutely necessitates robust regulation. There are huge risks from cyber attacks, and the black box nature of some AI decision-making makes transparency crucial. We need regulations to ensure transparency, security, reliability, and ultimately to maintain public trust.
But the current regulatory landscape seems pretty messy, right? Fragmented globally.
Very fragmented. You have the EU moving forward with its proposed AI Act, which is quite comprehensive. It classifies critical infrastructure AI as high risk, demanding strict oversight, human supervision, detailed risk management systems.
And the U.S.
The U.S. has tended towards a more sector-specific approach. There isn't one overarching federal AI regulation yet. This can lead to inconsistencies, gaps, maybe slower responses compared to the EU's unified approach.
So, no global standard yet. What should future regulations focus on?
Well, international collaboration is really key. Groups like ISO and IEC are working on global standards because AI obviously doesn't stop at borders. Future frameworks really need to consider several things. Comprehensive risk assessment for AI systems, clear requirements for transparency in how AI makes decisions, strong data privacy protections, and standards for interoperability to prevent companies from locking customers into their specific systems.
And flexibility must be important too, given how fast AI evolves.
Absolutely. Regulations need to be flexible enough to adapt to rapidly changing technology. And crucially, ethical considerations need to be baked into the design and deployment of AI right from the start, not just bolted on as an afterthought.
This is where that concept of public AI comes in as a potential solution, especially for U.S. national security. It sounds like a two-pronged approach.
That's right. The first part is about developing publicly funded, owned, and operated layers within the AI tech stack. This could mean everything from hardware and cloud infrastructure to data sets, models, and applications, essentially creating public options that coexist alongside the private sector.
What would that look like in practice? Government-run data centers.
It could mean exactly that. Substantial government investment in building public data centers, maybe like Stargate, but publicly owned. It could mean hosting certain government AI functions on public cloud infrastructure, organizing vast public data sets specifically for national security or public good applications, and critically, hiring significant AI talent directly into government roles, not just relying on contractors.
Why is that direct hiring so important?
The aim is to counteract the downsides of over-reliance on private contractors. That can lead to inflated costs, project failures, and importantly, it can drain the government's own internal expertise and capacity. A public option creates independence, free from potential conflicts of interest or the influence of powerful private figures. Think about the concerns raised over Elon Musk's control of Starlink during conflicts, or recent worries about Microsoft's security potentially impacting government systems. A public AI alternative provides vital redundancy and democratic control.
Now, there are some current U.S. efforts like the National AI Research Resource, NAA, or DOE's Fast AI, DoD's Joint Common AI platform. Are these steps in that direction?
They are important steps, yes, but the argument for public AI suggests these current initiatives often fall short in scope and scale. They frequently still rely heavily on private sector contributions and partnerships. The vision here is more ambitious, building truly independent, government-controlled capabilities that can complement or even serve as an alternative to the private sector where core national interests are at stake. It's about rebuilding robust, in-house government technical capacity.
Okay, so that's the public auction piece. What's the second part? regulating the private firms.
Exactly. The second part involved applying public utility-style regulations to the dominant private AI firms. This actually draws from a long American tradition of regulating essential services.
Like electricity or railroads back in the day, what kind of tools would be used?
You could use tools like structural separations. This means preventing companies from having vertically integrated control across the entire AI stack. For instance, preventing a dominant chip maker from also owning a dominant cloud provider. The idea is to break up potential monopolies and keep the playing field level.
Makes sense. What else?
Non-discrimination rules, often called neutrality mandates. This would require providers of essential AI infrastructure, like cloud platforms, to serve all legitimate users neutrally without favoring their own services or discriminating against competitors through pricing or access. This ensures fair and open access for everyone.
And restrictions on foreign influence.
Yes, absolutely. Restrictions on foreign ownership, control, and investment in critical AI infrastructure are crucial for national security. This builds on existing export controls and involves scrutinizing partnerships, like those involving significant investment from countries like the UAE for potential security risks.
So it's a pretty comprehensive regulatory toolkit. What are the main benefits proponents see in this combined public AI framework for national security?
There are several key benefits. First, proponents argue it would bolster innovation tailored to national needs. Public AI, being democratically accountable, could drive R&D focused on things like AI safety or public sector applications, free from purely commercial pressures. Remember, the U.S. government has historically been a massive engine for transformational innovation. The Manhattan Project, Apollo, the internet itself. Second, it grants the government greater independence from market actors whose interests might not always align with national security. Relying too heavily on a few private companies creates lock-in problems and vulnerabilities, as we discussed with Starlink. Public AI creates alternatives, fosters competition, and ensures national goals aren't held hostage by private decisions.
And what about serving the broader public good, beyond just security?
That's another major argument. Public AI could ensure investment in public goods using AI to tackle challenges like poverty, climate change, or disease, areas where private firms might underinvest because the return on investment isn't immediate or obvious. It rebuilds state capacity and accountability, giving the government the tools and expertise to address critical societal issues.
And it aims to build safer, more democratic AI.
Yes, the goal is AI that is inherently safe, rights-protecting, and democracy-enhancing. This is positioned in contrast to the sometimes mixed track record of unregulated big tech on issues like public safety, privacy, and democratic discourse, think about social media's impact, or current concerns about copyrighted data being used to train AI models without permission. Public AI, proponents argue, would have democratic oversight and ethical guardrails built in from the start.
Given the warnings from some AI leaders themselves about potential existential risks, how does public AI address those high-stakes scenarios?
That's a crucial point. The public AI framework suggests the government should lead AI safety research and manage the development and deployment of high-risk frontier AI models in controlled, publicly accountable environments. This avoids the move fast and break things culture sometimes found in the commercial sector, which could be incredibly dangerous with potentially transformative or even hazardous AI. The public sector can prioritize safety and caution without the same quarterly earnings pressures driving risk-taking.
Now, there are definitely criticisms of this whole public AI idea. A common one is that regulating U.S. tech companies or creating public competitors will just hand dominance to China because China doesn't play by those rules.
Yeah.
We've heard people like Mark Zuckerberg argue against breaking up Facebook for that reason, or former Google CEO Eric Schmidt preferring industry self-regulation. How do proponents counter that?
That's a frequent argument, but proponents say it rests on a couple of flawed assumptions. First, the idea that monopoly or oligopoly is actually better for innovation and national security than a regulated competitive market.
Is there evidence against that?
Well, historically, regulated monopolies like AT&T's Bell Labs did produce incredible innovation, but they operated within a framework that ensured public service and disciplined their behavior. Unregulated monopolies, on the other hand, often tend to stifle broader competition and innovation in the long run. Look at various antitrust cases against big tech platforms. So the argument is that smart regulation can actually spur more diverse innovation, not less, by keeping the market competitive.
And the second flawed assumption.
The assumption that American tech companies' interests always perfectly align with U.S. national interests.
That seems a bit optimistic, maybe.
It can be. While we hope for tech patriotism, the reality is that corporations are primarily driven by shareholder profit. Those profit motives don't always line up neatly with national security goals, especially when these companies have significant operations, investments, or dependencies in adversarial countries like China. Economic stakes abroad can sometimes influence lobbying efforts back in Washington. So simply trusting private enterprise to handle national security is seen as a potentially risky gamble.
Okay, what about the final big criticism? Cost and feasibility. Critics say building public AI infrastructure would be way too expensive, or that the government just can't innovate fast enough compared to the private sector.
This criticism often misses the intended scope, proponents would say. Public AI isn't necessarily about replacing private AI entirely, but complementing it. It focuses on addressing areas where the private sector might underinvest, like fundamental AI safety research, or building truly resilient, critical national infrastructure.
And the government's ability to innovate.
Historically, the U.S. government has proven capable of massive transformational innovation when needed again. Think Manhattan Project, Apollo, the Internet. The argument isn't that government is always faster, but that building public technological capacity isn't a bug, it's a necessary feature. It addresses the real problem of underdeveloped governmental tech capabilities and ensures national resilience. It's about creating a robust, layered ecosystem with both public and private strengths, not relying solely on one pillar.
Okay, so we've covered the enormous energy thirst of AI and the complex geopolitical chess game it's creating, where private companies wield this unprecedented power. Now let's get down to the absolute heart of it all. The chips, the silicon. It's what this entire digital empire is built on.
The foundation of the foundation.
Exactly. Then there's the heart of it all, the chips. I saw this anonymous post online. Can't verify it, of course, but the sentiment felt incredibly real. It was supposedly from a young engineer at a semiconductor fabrication plant, a fab, in Taiwan. Let's call him Wei.
Okay, Wei in Taiwan.
He described his world as this place of absolute purity and intense pressure. 12 hours a day in a bunny suit, inside a clean room where the air is fewer particles than a hospital surgery room. His job. Monitoring the etching of these microscopic pathways onto silicon wafers.
Incredible precision work.
Yeah. He knows the designs he's working on are the most advanced in the world. The actual brains for those AI supercomputers being built back in Texas.
Yeah.
He feels this quiet pride in his craft, knowing his hands are literally shaping the future.
I can imagine that pride.
But he also carries his heavy weight. He hears the news about geopolitical tensions, about warships, political speeches, all seemingly circling around his island, his factory, his specific job. He knows this global race for AI dominance, this battle between U.S. tech titans and national strategic ambitions. It all flows through the sterile, silent room where he works.
Wow.
His precision work isn't just a job, it's become a strategic asset in a global conflict. And he feels this immense, unspoken pressure of being, potentially, the single point of failure the entire world depends on.
That puts a human face on the abstraction of a supply chain, doesn't it? It's not just a line on a chart. It's people like Wei under immense strain.
Exactly. The fact that a few square miles on one island holds the key to a global technological revolution, it's a staggering vulnerability. And this is precisely why you see these tech giants pouring billions into designing their own chips now. It's not just about speed or efficiency anymore. It's a desperate scramble for dependence. They're trying to escape the very dependence that gives Wei's job its immense and, frankly, terrifying global importance.
Wei's story perfectly captures the absolute criticality of advanced chip design and manufacturing. These tiny pieces of silicon, they are quite literally the engines driving big data processing, AI, high-performance computing. Without them, this whole AI revolution just stops.
And the U.S. has traditionally been a powerhouse here, especially in design, right?
Absolutely. U.S. firms hold something like 46% of global chip design sales, and even more impressively, about 72% of the critical chip design software and license sales. That revenue stream fuels massive R&D investments, helping them stay ahead. We're talking major players. AMD, Broadcom, Intel, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, plus the crucial design software companies like Cadence, Mentor Graphics, Synopsys.
And we're seeing this trend of custom silicon, right? Companies designing their own chips.
Yes, that's a huge trend. Custom silicon or application-specific integrated circuits, ASICs. Companies like Apple, Google, Amazon, even OpenAI are increasingly designing their own bespoke chips.
Why do that? Why not just buy from NVIDIA or Intel?
Because it allows them to optimize everything. Power consumption, performance, even the physical size of the chips specifically for their unique AI workloads. Think of it like getting a custom-tailored suit versus buying off the rack. For highly specialized, massive-scale AI tasks, that custom fit can provide significant advantages in efficiency and cost over time.
Makes sense. Better performance, maybe lower power bills if you design it just right.
Yeah.
But the US isn't the only one playing this game anymore. China is coming up fast in chip design.
China is definitely the primary competitor now in chip design. Their sales hit nearly $91 billion in 2024, up almost 12% from the year before. And a huge part of that growth is state-backed.
How does that state backing work?
Through initiatives like the China Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund, often called the Big Fund. It's had phase 1, phase 2, and now there's a phase 3, which is reportedly even larger. This fund has poured billions into nurturing domestic fabless design companies who design chips but don't make them, and integrated device manufacturers who do both. This state support is absolutely crucial to their rapid expansion.
So are specific Chinese companies making headway, even with US restrictions trying to limit them?
Yes, definitely. Companies like Huawei Silicon, despite all the pressure on Huawei, Silicon is still noted as a highly profitable, fabless company. Others like Will Semiconductor, Hygon Information Technology, Giga Device Semiconductor, they've all seen sales growth.
Interesting.
And while the very top tier of Chinese firms might have seen a slight dip collectively, the sheer number of companies is exploding. China had over 3,600 chip design companies in 2024, up significantly from the year before. About 20% of those had sales over 100 million yuan. So while some smaller ones might fail, the overall industry expansion and the sheer volume of activity is undeniable. It shows this massive long-term strategic commitment to building an independent semiconductor ecosystem.
I read that Chinese experts like Wei Xiaojun from Tsinghua University talk about achieving leapfrog development. What does that actually mean in this context? Are they just trying to catch up step by step?
Leapfrog development suggests something more ambitious than just catching up. It means they don't want to just follow the established path set by the West. They aim to bypass certain stages, innovate on their own terms, and establish a fully independent semiconductor innovation ecosystem within China.
So developing their own IP, design tools, eventually manufacturing.
Exactly. The ultimate goal is to reduce or ideally eliminate their reliance on foreign technology, particularly from the US. This would make them far more resilient to external pressures like export controls and give them true technological sovereignty in this critical area.
Now, shifting back to the current market, especially for AI chips used in data centers, NVIDIA seems almost like a monopoly, holding around 90% of that market, maybe 80% on desktop. What's their secret sauce? Is it just that their hardware is that much better?
The hardware is definitely cutting edge, but the real secret sauce for NVIDIA, their biggest advantage is their software ecosystem, CDA.
CDA, can you explain that?
CAA stands for Compute Unified Device Architecture. They've been developing it relentlessly for something like 17 years. It's a proprietary software platform, libraries, tools, compilers that allows developers to easily tap into the massive parallel processing power of NVIDIA GPUs for general-purpose computing, especially AI and scientific workloads.
So it makes their hardware easier to use for AI.
Much easier and much more powerful. It offers universal support across all their hardware, from an old laptop GPU to their latest monster chips like the B200. It works on Windows, works on Linux. It's incredibly versatile. Think of CAA as the de facto programming language of AI.
And that creates lock-in.
Absolutely. It's an unparalleled software advantage. NVIDIA's ecosystem supports over 4,000 applications, has around 5 million developers using it globally, and supports something like 20,000 AI companies. Once developers learn CAA, build their applications on it, optimize their workflows for it, it's very difficult and costly for them to switch to a competitor, even if that competitor offers slightly better hardware specs on paper. CAA creates this incredibly powerful moat around NVIDIA's dominance.
Okay, so it's the ecosystem. How are competitors trying to break through that moat? Google has its tensor processing units, TPUs. They seem powerful, but they're mostly for internal use or rent on Google Cloud.
That's right. Google designed TPUs primarily for its own massive AI efforts, things like search, translate, photos. They offer access only through their Google Cloud platform, GCP, for rent. You can't just buy TPUs off the shelf.
What are the challenges with that approach for Google and for potential customers?
Several big challenges limit TPU adoption. First, market share. GCP only holds about 11% of the overall cloud market, way behind AWS and Azure. So fewer companies are likely to build their core infrastructure around a platform-specific chip on a smaller cloud.
And the user experience.
Many users report that GCP can be more difficult to work with compared to competitors. Some developers have even said they prefer paying more for NVIDIA GPUs on AWS or Azure just to avoid the perceived pains of configuring and managing things on GCP.
Ouch. What about software compatibility? Does CIA's dominance hurt TPUs there?
Hugely. PyTorch, which is an incredibly popular machine learning framework used by many researchers and companies, doesn't natively support TPUs. To use PyTorch on TPUs, you need workarounds, using something called XLA, accelerated linear algebra, which adds significant complexity.
So it's not straightforward for developers.
Not if they're used to PyTorch. It's like having a great new tool, but needing a special adapter to use it with your existing setup. The best way to use TPUs is often through Google's own framework called JAX. But JAX just isn't as widely adopted yet as PyTorch or TensorFlow. This software friction is a massive barrier. And there are other issues too. TPUs are generally much scarcer than NVIDIA GPUs. Even inside Google, teams apparently struggle with internal quota systems to get access.
Even internally.
That's the reporting. Plus, the hardware design itself can be a hurdle. The latest TPUs require specialized liquid cooling systems and often need significant redesigns of data center power and layout. That makes them unsuitable for many customers who don't own and control their own data center facilities.
And they still rely on external manufacturing, right?
Yes. Like NVIDIA, Google outsources manufacturing using TSMC for key parts, maybe Broadcom for some design aspects. So they face the same bottlenecks, with TSMC's advanced manufacturing capacity often booked years out. Google's primary focus isn't selling chips at volume, it's powering its own services. So while TPUs are technically very impressive, maybe among the best ML chips in the world for certain tasks in terms of speed and scalability, that scarcity and the lack of a broad, easy-to-use software ecosystem like CADA really limit their wider impact.
Okay, so TPUs are powerful but niche. What about Amazon? AWS is the biggest cloud provider. They have their own chips too. Inferentia and Trainium, how are they competing?
AWS has been strategically developing custom chips since 2018. Inferentia was initially focused on AI inference that's running the already trained models to make predictions. Trainium was focused on the computationally intensive training process.
They're converging now.
It looks like it. They seem to be focusing heavily on Trainium going forward, aiming for it to provide strong performance for both training and inference. They've talked less about active development on Inferentia recently. This simplifies their offering.
What's the latest on Trainium, and what's their main selling point?
Trainium 2 is available now, and Trainium 3 is planned for the second half of 2025. That one's going to use an advanced 3-nanometer manufacturing process, which means incredibly tiny transistors leading to much more power and efficiency. They're promising Trainium 3 will have twice the performance of Trainium 2.
And the selling point? Price.
Price is a huge part of their pitch. Amazon consistently emphasizes that Trainium chips cost significantly less to run than equivalent NVIDIA products, potentially offering comparable speeds at roughly half the price for certain workloads.
Is that attracting customers?
It seems to be gaining serious traction. Apple is reportedly using Trainium 2 for some of its own internal AI development. And Anthropic, a major U.S. AI startup and competitor to OpenAI, has committed to acquiring hundreds of thousands of Trainium 2 chips for training its generative AI models. That's significant enterprise adoption, validating Amazon's big bet on custom silicon.
So this push for independence isn't just Google and Amazon. Microsoft is in this too. These hyperscalers, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they're collectively investing something like $85 billion annually in their own proprietary AI infrastructure, including chip development, largely to reduce reliance on NVIDIA.
That number is staggering. $85 billion a year.
And Google's CEO, Sundar Pichai, even said there's no reason we can't scale our computing power by hundreds of thousands of times in a few years. What does that level of investment and that kind of statement signal about where things are headed?
It signals an all-out sprint towards self-sufficiency and an almost unimaginable increase in computing power. It tells you these tech giants see owning the underlying hardware, the chips, the infrastructure, as absolutely critical to owning the future of AI. Pichai's statement, while bold, reflects a genuine belief that current limitations can be smashed through sheer capital investment and relentless innovation.
And the implication?
The implication is that AI capabilities are likely to expand at an even faster rate than we've already seen, becoming even more deeply embedded in practically every aspect of our lives, from hyper-personalized services to autonomous systems to national defense. This massive investment also means more competition in the chip market itself, which could eventually lead to more affordable and diverse AI solutions beyond just NVIDIA.
But, and this brings us back to Wei's story, for all this innovation and investment, there's this glaring strategic vulnerability. The heavy reliance on a highly concentrated global supply chain.
Absolutely.
When the key manufacturing sites for the most advanced chips, the fabs, are clustered in just a few specific regions, most notably Taiwan, it creates immense strategic risks, doesn't it?
It's a huge Achilles heel for the entire global tech ecosystem. Wei's story isn't just an anecdote, it represents this profound geopolitical reality. The fact that so much critical manufacturing capability resides in a potential geopolitical flashpoint is a staggering vulnerability.
What could happen?
Think about it. A major regional conflict, a natural disaster, even a targeted blockade. Any significant disruption to that supply chain could have absolutely catastrophic consequences. It could impact national economies overnight, cripple military capabilities reliant on advanced tech, and slam the brakes on AI development worldwide.
So this concentration is why we're seeing this almost desperate scramble for silicon independence.
That's precisely it. It's why the U.S. is pushing the CHIPS Act to incentivize domestic manufacturing. It's why Europe is doing the same. And it's why Google, Amazon, Microsoft are pouring those tens of billions into designing their own chips and exploring alternative manufacturing options. Even if it's incredibly expensive and difficult to replicate what TSMC does, the strategic imperative to diversify and secure their own supply is overwhelming. This race isn't just about having the fastest chip, it's increasingly about ensuring you can actually get the chips you need, reliably and consistently, in an increasingly uncertain world. It's fundamentally about national and economic security now, just as much as technological leadership.
So we've journeyed quite a distance today, from the actual dirt being moved in Abilene, Texas, to the colossal energy demands powering our digital future. We've navigated the complex, almost invisible digital battlefields of geopolitical influence, and finally, we've peered into the microscopic, yet world-shaping wonders of silicon chips. What's really clear from all this is that we're not just witnessing a technological shift. It's a profound restructuring of global power, of resources, and ultimately of our shared future.
It really is. This deep dive, I think, has revealed this silent, almost hidden, privately funded race that's happening on an unprecedented scale. It might actually be the largest capital undertaking by the private sector since the Industrial Revolution, when you think about the sheer investment involved. And it's just a handful of billionaires and their corporations who are building the very infrastructure that will likely control much of our future. An infrastructure that demands immense energy, is actively reshaping international power dynamics, and relies on these incredibly complex and, as we saw, fragile supply chains for the essential chips that make it all possible.
And the choices being made right now, choices about energy sources, about governance models for AI, about chip independence and supply chains, these decisions will dictate far more than just the speed of AI progress. They'll shape the very nature of who controls this powerful technology, who benefits from it, and thinking back to Earl and Wei, what the human cost might ultimately be along the way. It really feels like a foundational moment for a new era, one that's unfolding largely out of sight for most people, yet it's actively shaping everything that comes next.